Hey, welcome to Half the Battle.
In today's toy and character review, we're gonna take a look at one of the weirder ones. And I don't mean weird as in they're an alien or something.
I mean, weird as in, why does this character even exist?
So meet Double Blast. This figure was released in 2001 with no original body parts. And that's because it just uses the entire Roadblock mold from 1984. And yet, he isn't Roadblock. At all.
For an explanation, we gotta dive into the past.
If 1997 was the worst year for G.I.Joe, and it was, but I mean when it came to lost molds, then 2000 and 2001 were the worst years for lost copyrights. Yeah, Hasbro had been less than tenacious when it came to making sure they still had all their trademarks and copyrights for their, to be fair, hundreds of G.I. Joe names. This led to such baffling rebrandings as General Hawk getting a name change to General Tomahawk, or toys becoming entirely new characters, like the Baroness becoming Chameleon.
I'll talk more about this later, but I guess I should review the actual figure itself first.
Well, it's a Roadblock figure. It's a damn good mold and has all the appropriate colors, looking nice and military-like. If it was actually Roadblock, I'd say it was one of the best versions out there, especially since the type of plastic is less likely to break. Of course, since they did use the 1984 mold for this guy, that does mean his head only turns side to side since it isn't ball jointed. That's the only point against it I can really make. His accessories are nearly identical to the original. I say nearly, because the colors are different. A green backpack instead of brown, and a black machine gun instead of green, with the helmet being the most similar. But there are two far more important differences, and both have to do with that backpack. For one thing, it used to be in two parts with a removable ammo box, but that just seems to be part of the mold now. And for another, there used to be a peg to snap the machine gun stand onto, but that's gone, which is a real shame because it was a neat feature. Overall, yeah, this is a good figure and would be an excellent Roadblock. Except he isn't Roadblock, he's Double Blast.
For the hows and whys, it's time to look at the character, which pretty much just means the file card.
Okay, you know how I said that Hasbro lost a lot of trademarks and copyrights? Well, that's true, but it might not be the full story here. You see, Double Blast's real name on the file card is Charles Griffith, and that name comes from a real person. He's a G.I. Joe collector and co-author of the Tomart's G.I. Joe Prize Guide.
This was actually a thing in 2001 and 2002 where G.I. Joe characters were named after collectors or Hasbro associates.
For example, another character, Sidetrack, was named John Boyce after a toy designer at the company. There is, however, an obvious difference between Sidetrack and Double Blast here, apart from one guy being white, I mean. Sidetrack has a new head sculpt. So does Crossfire, the figure that was in the 2-pack together with Double Blast. Double Blast himself just has Roadblock's head.
And that's a real shame because it would have solved all the problems associated with this guy.
They should have just given him a new head sculpt. Then it could have been a unique character with a unique look instead of a clone. I don't understand why they didn't do this.
Okay, that was a whole tangent just to point out that copyright or trademark issues weren't the only reason we got Double Blast.
I do believe Hasbro genuinely wanted to create new characters, as there were a bunch of those created in the early 2000s. I applaud their effort to try and inject some fresh blood into the franchise.
Too bad it didn't work, like, at all.
The only new character I can think of that had any kind of staying power is Kamakura.
Yes, I know I've made this cheap joke before, but the low-hanging fruit is so hard to resist when it's so succulent.
Double Blast sure as hell didn't have any staying power. Hell, this video was probably the most attention the toy has gotten in 20 years.
So I might as well give this guy his due and look at the whole file card.
Well, he's a heavy machine gunner, and that's about the only thing he actually has in common with Roadblock, besides looking identical to him, I mean, so he is very much his own character. His secondary specialty is electrical engineering, not a chef like Roadblock. You know, I wish they had just leaned into the whole thing and put in the file card that this guy was a terrible cook or something. You know, if the mold reuse is that obvious.
Acknowledging it couldn't make it worse.
Anyway, he can take apart, repair and reassemble an M60 in under a minute in the dark, and that's why he's a G.I. Joe. Okay, that is actually part of some military training, so kudos there. He can do more than that though. It seems he's a repair wizard and he's fixed anything from vacuum cleaners to electrical equipment.
So, his choices of career were either G.I. Joe or Best Buy Geek Squad.
the last thing the card says is that he leads his squad of gunners against Cobra and relies on the element of surprise. Given he's a Master Sergeant, that makes sense, I guess. And a heavy machine gun would cause quite the surprise if you aren't expecting it. We don't really get much of a personality out of this card, just that he's really good at what he does.
Now, that is pretty common for a G.I. Joe file card.
But considering the name is based on a real person, I can't help but feel it's a little self-insert Gary Stu-ish. Not that I really mind that much.
If Hasbro ever offered to put my name on a file card, yeah, I'd take that opportunity, and I'd want the character to be as awesome as possible too.
And that pretty much was Double Blast. This was the only toy the character ever got, and the only time he was mentioned.
There's a weird little epilogue to this weird toy though.
As in 2002, Roadblock got his first figure after the original line, and his real name on that card was Charles Griffith, just like Double Blast. This was simply an error on Hasbro's part, as the whole card is a carbon copy of Double Blast's. They just grabbed the wrong file card to copy. All other future Roadblock toys had the correct name of Marvin Hinton with the proper file card information. As far as this toy goes, it's a good Roadblock figure, and I'd use it as that, especially since Double Blast never showed up again and wasn't very memorable.
Well, I'll see you next time, everybody, and hey, why not like, share, and subscribe if that's your thing.
But there's